Hey family, this is Tanya Rutledge of the Nguzo Saba 365, wishing you a happy Habari Gani Humpday. Thank you so much for joining us in the last of our Habari Gani Humpday Kwanzaa series. So far, we have talked about the left model of holiday spending and how to think of your holiday spending from an African perspective this year. We've talked about what Kwanzaa and the Nguzo Saba are. We talked about how to prepare for Kwanzaa, how to actually celebrate Kwanzaa, and now we need to spend some time talking about how to make Kwanzaa and the Nguzo Saba a 365-day-a-year thing, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. If you have not joined us for the rest of our series, you can feel free to go to our Facebook page, the Nguzo Saba 365, and check us out. There are videos with everything that's in our series, and beyond that, you can find videos from our episodes of Principled Conversations, and a lot of inspirational affirmations, and information that might be helpful to you. So we're so glad that you're joining us, and hopefully this will give you a little bit of extra information and enlightenment in the coming new year. Okay, so Kwanzaa is almost over, right? If you are listening to the sound of my voice on the day that I'm making it, it is the Wednesday before the end of Kwanzaa. We are actually on the 5th day. Our principal is Nia today. So we've only got a couple days left. So when Kwanzaa is over, should we pack it up until next year? Should we just basically take everything, put it away in a box, including the concepts, and pack them up and not pay any attention to them until next December? No, don't be silly, my people. We're not going to do that. Where you may take down your altars and you may put up your unity cup, and you may dispose of your mazeo or crops, and the children may have opened their zawadi or presents. That doesn't mean that we conceptually pack everything up. We're only doing a physical pack up. That is not a conceptual and thought pack up. So if you're familiar with who we are and what we do, you know that the mission of the Nguzo Saba 365 is to inspire people of African descent in the diaspora, in the US and throughout our world to practice these principles on a daily basis. So let's talk about why. Okay, so what are 5 reasons why we want to practice the Nguzo Saba 365 days a year? Well, first of all, it gives us an opportunity to have a consistent, be on a consistent topic of culturally affirming conversation and subject of thought. So we want to be able to consistently talk about and think about these principles because they are culturally affirming. They are things that get us to think about our people in a positive way. They give us a consistent opportunity to educate people of African descent. So if we just talk about this during December, we're only really doing the education that's required during December. Doing this 365 days a year gives us a consistent opportunity to expose people of African descent to these concepts all year. So it's not brand new, or it's not something people are not familiar with when December comes. Third, it gives us a consistent exposure to positive Afrocentric concepts. So it changes our conversation, it gives us opportunities to educate, and it gives us exposure to positive concepts. And typically, these may not be concepts that we might even associate with our culture, depending on what our exposure to our own culture is on a regular basis, on a daily basis. So it gives us consistent exposure, and it not only to these concepts, but as Afrocentric concepts. Fourth, it gives us a consistent opportunity to move from thought and conversation to concrete automatic action. So if I'm continually talking about concepts such as unity or umoja, I'm consistently talking about concepts such as collective work and responsibility, or ujima. After a while, if I'm consistently thinking about these things and I'm consistently turning that thought into conversation, it should follow that there would be some kind of concrete automatic action from that. Just as if you constantly had a negative thought and you spoke on that negative thought consistently, you probably are going to have some negative action associated that. So we have a positive thought, we have conversation around it, and that generates concrete action, because now when we're thinking, well, wait a minute. If I'm thinking about this in a way that promotes ujima, I would do this and I wouldn't do this. So it gives us that opportunity. Last but not least, fifth, this creates a positive cultural shift for generations to come. So it may be a little awkward to think like this, to use the language, to consistently talk about this if you have not done so, and you're maybe in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, your 70s and beyond, if this is something that is new to you. However, if your children and their children become exposed to it earlier than maybe you did, this would become much more automatic, and it can create a shift in our culture so that it makes sense to our kids to talk about these things, because they always have. So even if it feels disingenuous or a little uncomfortable for us because it's a change, when I guarantee the next generation will feel differently. And I'll give you a personal example. These are not concepts that I came to have any knowledge of until I was maybe, I would say at least 30 or over. And I had never heard of Kwanzaa before. I don't think until I was in my 20s. I didn't really understand what it was. And it took a number of times of having exposure, going to festivals, going to readings, doing my own research for me to really understand not only what Kwanzaa is, what the principles, the Nguzo Saba are, how these things came about, and their importance. But that took time. My son has started to have exposure probably at age 4 or 5. I'm thinking maybe it actually might have been even a little earlier than that. For him, this is not necessarily always an automatic conversation, but he's grown up with it. So by the time he reaches his 20s, this is old hat to them. That's the kind of cultural shift that we want for our children. So let's get down to the nitty gritty. What are 5 ways that you can make Kwanzaa, or the Nguzo Saba, a 365-day a year thing? What are 5 concrete ways or conceptual ways, however you want to think about it? If we want to tackle a problem, sometimes we've got to go get right in there and attack it. So in this case, we're going to TASE the problem. That's our acronym for today, is TASE. We're going to think, talk, act, support, and educate. So let's take a look at each one of those to see what they mean. Okay, first and foremost, we're going to think about the principles on a consistent basis. What does that look like? It could be as simple as doing daily affirmations around a principle. And if you are familiar with something that we do here at the Nguzo Saba 365, we make every attempt to present you all with a daily thought or daily affirmation around a different principle every day. But why is that? Because we want people to consistently think about these things, consistently hear the language, because people are typically not familiar with the words and those words as concepts, and those words as Afrocentric concepts. Another thing that you can do is incorporate the principles into your prayer or meditation. If that's happening daily, why not introduce that? Why not introduce it or incorporate it into your prayer, into your meditation? That would be a consistent way for you to really think about these principles. Number 2, talk. We want to talk about the principles with others on a consistent basis. So that could be as simple as incorporating them into dinner table conversations, or considering them in your decision making. So, for example, it could be that maybe you and your spouse or partner meet weekly to talk about bills, or even meet bi-weekly to talk about bills and how you spend your money. It may be that the concept of ujama or cooperative economics comes up in that conversation. Well, wait a minute, let's look at how we're spending our money. So I feel like, in this area, we are spending too much money outside of our community. How can we change that? And then what can we do with the money that we save, because we're not just throwing it into the hands of other people who are not necessarily dedicated to the enrichment and benefit of our own people. So that's one way that you could incorporate into daily conversation on a consistent or at least on a consistent basis, get it into conversation. Okay, number 3, act. Act on the principles on a consistent basis. So you hear there's a lot of cooperation between the reasons why I said we should make this a 365-day-a-year thing and how to. Okay, there's those things are connected. We're acting on the principles on a consistent basis. So at this point, it may be that you're making a consistent effort to make sure that you're patronizing Black-owned businesses. You need to know what they are in order to do so. So make sure that you're seeking them out, that you're asking people. Are you in groups that give you more information about Black-owned businesses, even help you think about how to engage in financial exchange with such businesses. Another example is to work with others to make change in your community. So if there is an issue that you need to tackle, let's say the issue is littering. Let's say the issue is littering. So let's say you live in a neighborhood that is a predominantly Black neighborhood, and you are tired of seeing things like garbage on the streets, people dropping trash, not picking it up. It may be that your action says, hey, you know what? Let's form a block club. And let's make sure that we're going out once a week in some kind of a cycled calendar format, and we're cleaning up our streets, because we want to make sure that people know that we care about our community. We want to send a message to those who maybe don't have quite that concern, that they need to respect the community as well. So we're acting on the principles on a consistent basis. Number 4, support our people, institutions, and businesses whenever possible. So support. That might mean, as I said earlier, connecting with apps, social media groups, websites on resources for Black-owned businesses. That might mean donating your time or your money to Black-owned institutions. It could also mean supporting others as they work towards a life that enriches and incorporates these principles. So it could be that somebody is working on their purpose, working on NIA and how to use their purpose in order to make better the lives of our people. It could be that you support that person. Let's say that person needs childcare because they're trying to run a community program and they're having to take a newborn baby with them. It may be that you say, hey, no worries, drop the baby off. I'll watch the baby for a few hours. So support can look different. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're spending money to support something. It could be your time, and it could be done in a very unconventional way. And last but not least, number 5, educate others to inspire them to think, talk, act, support our people, and educate others. So do we see the connections here? So once you're doing all these things, then you can work to do the same thing in someone else's life. Okay, by the time you're thinking about this, you're talking about it, you're acting on it, and you're supporting people, that's when the education comes in on your behalf, and you educate others to start this process all over again. So what could that look like concretely? In your own home, it could look like posting the principles up and discussing with them with your children regularly. And let's say you're outside the home. Let's say you're a teacher, or you work with youth in some way, shape, or form. This is a great thing that you could do in your classroom, in your community center. Make sure that you have those principles posted so that children get that exposure to them. If you work in an office place, those things can be posted in your office place, particularly if you have your own business. My business owners, especially those who have storefronts or who share office space with others, post these principles in that space. If you own a coffee house, post those principles up and say, hey, have you had with your shot of espresso, did you take a shot of these principles today, and expose them to people? Okay, so figure out ways that you can do that. You can also do things like highlighting the principles during events. So parties, book clubs, mixers, religious gatherings. This is something that you can bring up during, just as some people start out gatherings with a prayer. You can incorporate prayer if that's something that you do, but you can also incorporate these principles and you can say them during your meetup. So if you start a book club, you can say, our book club, we look at the principles of the Nguzo Saba, which are, and our mission is to really work towards increasing the level of kuumba in our communities, the level of creativity, and using that to have a positive impact on our people. And it might be that's how you start out every single book club. And so the people in the book club maybe had never heard of these concepts before, but you bring them to their attention and they say, well, I know one of these concepts because I've heard kuumba, because we talk about creativity in my book club all the time. Think about ways to educate others to inspire them to think, talk, act, support our people so that they can in turn educate others. All right, so we hope that you enjoyed our Habari Gani Humpday Kwanzaa series. Again, you can follow us on our Facebook page at the Nguzo Saba 365. We are on Instagram. We are on TikTok. We are on YouTube as well, but we're not there as strongly as we are on Facebook. So make sure that you like, share, follow, and stay principled, family. Thank you so much for tuning in. Love you all.